The entire Sheriff's Department is moving into the new Center for Public Safety in Live Oak, a one-stop, state-of-the-art shop in the former Live Oak Business Park built by Barry Swenson Builder and paid for with $44 million in redevelopment agency money, just weeks before the state closed those agencies and would have reclaimed that money for its own financial needs.
When I became sheriff in 2009, we set the goal to find a new facility, and we worked hard on finding the financing for that project first. Redevelopment agencies, which was the bulk or the entire financing for our project, became under fire and then were eventually dissolved. And so in that dissolution of the redevelopment agencies, there became a little struggle over the amount of money that was left in our local RDA funds.
When the governor announced that he was going to eliminate redevelopment agencies, the communities of Live Oak and Soquel rose up. We had a rally with over 200 people concerned about what was going to happen. And the county of Santa Cruz took a little bit different strategy than most redevelopment agencies in the state of California. We decided, we had a list of projects identified by the community. Why don't we get those under contract and basically spend the money before the state could take back the funds? Because this is our property tax money, and we felt like we should keep it here. So we had a list of $675 million worth of projects. We had about $80 million. So it took a number of meetings at the board level for us to come up with the right list of projects. The Center for Public Safety was the largest project, but we also funded a $5 million for a Boys and Girls Club. We funded a new park in Soquel. We funded work down by the yacht harbor, making it safer for people to walk along the beach there. We have the beautiful East Cliff Drive Parkway project that's already been completed. So we got a lot of projects done, and we managed to make it through the state review system without them asking for any of our money back. And we're the only jurisdiction in the county of Santa Cruz that didn't have to give back money to the state of California. So we think that's a victory for the community.
If this were done from ground up, start over on a 5-acre parcel in the county of Santa Cruz, $60 million would have never covered this. There's a huge value to the county in having taken on these relatively new buildings and then being able to do the shell-out work that they needed.
The Swenson team, they built this project originally, and so they know every nuance to the property, every nook and cranny of each building, and they really helped us shape the building and gave us suggestions on the best way to utilize the space. And Keith Henderson and his team of Jeff Huff and the whole Swenson group has been fantastic to work with. They help us in any way they can. We stayed on budget. They try to throw in extras when they can, so that we meet our budget. And I can't say enough about the work that Keith Henderson and his team have done for us. Almost all of our work, whether it's the coroners or our crime scene people, our investigators, patrol, our civil process servers, all of our fiscal and admin staff, everybody's going to be here on site, and our people aren't going to have to drive to 5 or 6 different locations to complete their work on a daily basis. So I think we'll be much more productive. We're going to save a lot of time, and you've seen the building. It's not going to hurt to work out of this beautiful complex as well.
It became a real win-win. It came or a triple win, as you might say. It was a great win for the community. It was a great win for the Sheriff's Office. And for Barry Swenson Builders, they essentially became a recycler, if you will. We had a project, a property that was some 12 years old, and they were able to recycle and re-outfit that building, or the 3 buildings, to meet our needs.
So, join us now as the sheriff leads us on a tour to show you all the law enforcement functions brought together here. Walk in the door here and you've got some folks working, and then it flows really to a conference room that can be used by law enforcement agencies to sort of, again, kind of keep things under one roof. And then tell me how this flow works from where we're going to walk here.
Perfect. We're in the Forensic Sciences building, a 25,000 square foot building. Right now we're in the work area for our crime scene investigation detectives, our supervisors, our laboratory staff. This area here is just their office area. The hallway that we're going to walk through goes and bisects the building into an evidence gathering section and an evidence processing section. So I think what we'll do first is we'll go into the laboratory area, and you can see where all of our evidence winds up for court processing, for gathering and identification of evidence, and then the processing and eventually storage of evidence. This is the laboratory area where all of our evidence will wind up for processing. Behind us is the automated fingerprint identification system. So that's fingerprints. And fingerprint identification starts with the collection of evidence in the field. It winds up in our laboratory area where our investigators will process evidence, pull a latent fingerprint off of that evidence, whether it be a window, a beer can, anything that we gather evidence from. That latent fingerprint is then transferred to our fingerprint examiner. And this room gives all 21st century equipment for that latent print examiner to identify a fingerprint and then send it, upload it to local, state, and national databases to qualify that fingerprint and find an identification. So that's the latent print identification area. This is the laboratory area where all evidence processing is done. And then on the left, we have 3 different laboratories that do different processes.
So really, when if I may, this is really amazing when you think that you've consolidated everything once again to this one room that I can see by turning my head. So you have fingerprints, photography, bones. I mean, we'll dissect them, if you will, each one. But right now, really, within this room, everything happens.
Right. This is where all of our evidence that's gathered on the other half of the building winds up in this laboratory area. This is where all processes are taking place to dissect that evidence, break it down into a court exhibit, to become a piece that will help in prosecution.
Obviously, the communications improved because you could almost shout
right.
between the departments, right?
Communication has improved. Just the logistics in getting work done, the speed of work being done has improved greatly, and quite frankly, prosecution is going to be greatly improved. The integrity of evidence is maintained. The professional processing of evidence went from a very acceptable level to the best level that we can possibly afford for our community. This room, Romney, is a fingerprint processing room. We process fingerprints in a number of different ways, much like you see on TV. The old fingerprint dust with a brush is done in these laboratory hoods. Our old glue fuming processes have been converted into a new, these chambers are specific chambers that do condensing and processing of evidence and allow for patent identification of fingerprints. It turns a fingerprint into plastic through special chemical fuming. This is our old glue fuming hood, so it gives you an example of what we used to do and then what our new technologies are.
And you say that was it? That was
it.
The tank?
Absolutely.
The county tank?
The county had a glue fuming process like this, and then we had a vent hood. The hood is obviously for laboratory standards and the like. This is still an acceptable and regular process for fuming small evidence items. Our laboratory analysts are able to do processes now here. They do it in the glue fume. They do it in this fingerprint chamber. Everything was all provided as through this project. This is the photography area. So once a fingerprint is developed on a piece of evidence, and we're able to get that plastic view of that fingerprint, that piece of evidence can be brought in here, and under different light sources and with different photography systems, we're able to then take a digital image of that fingerprint. That's not the only thing we photograph. We can bring other pieces of evidence in here, whether it be a bloody knife or a window curtain or any piece of evidence that would be brought in that needs to be documented in a photographic way, and then that photography can then become a court exhibit. So we have the ability to not only do the photography in here under all different lighting circumstances, but then we have the ability to blow that fingerprint or that photograph up for court exhibits. Our responsibility is to follow the law with regard to gathering of evidence, processing of evidence, and then retaining evidence. Something that's not known by a lot of folks is any homicide investigation that results in an arrest and prosecution, that evidence has to be maintained for life. So we have evidence that goes back to the 1940s in homicides in our evidence processing room. And so photography, especially digital photography, is one of the best ways for us to maintain that evidence over a long time.
The same way we've all been impacted by larger hard drives and flash drives and that kind of thing, this must be a huge advancement for this effort, the fact that you can store so inexpensively and easily all this history.
Absolutely. It's not only are we complying with laws, as I mentioned, but the historical piece. As you go through the facility, you'll see some of our artwork. Actually, all of our artwork is historical photos of some of crime scenes, some of internal photography of the organization, and all that has been greatly improved with this new facility because we have this advanced digital photography storage. Our third laboratory, this is our forensic anthropology laboratory. So this is probably our pride and joy. Our laboratory manager is a PhD from UCSC. She's a forensic anthropologist, and that's her level of certification. This facility here allows us to do the same thing as we see on the television show with forensic anthropology, the Bones show. In our investigation as the Sheriff's Office, I'm also the coroner, and it's our responsibility to do a determination of all deaths that happen within the county, regardless of police jurisdiction. Many times in investigations, whether it be a construction site or just a hiker in the woods, we will come across unidentified remains, skeletal remains, bones. This is the area where bones will be brought to, and our forensic anthropologist is able to go through her training and find the origin of those bones, whether they're human or animal, the sex, the ethnicity, the age of the person. And then in this laboratory, she'll do not only the cleaning and the identification and photo documentation of the bones, but then she'll also sometimes do reconstruction, casting, those kind of things. So this is a complete new facility.
This is complete new. In other words, this was service that you didn't provide before this building, right?
We provided the service on a very limited basis, and we did it out of a closet, essentially. Now we have an actual 21st century laboratory that's dedicated to that process. We're able to do a number of different things quicker, and we're able to maintain integrity of evidence over a longer period of time because of the processes that we use.
Does having this expertise, it's interesting, obviously you're trying to get facts in a crime more readily, but also does it help you sort of disqualify non-criminal deaths more easily and kind of keep you moving and not kind of gummed up with a lot of these other cases?
Absolutely. Obviously, you're a little educated in our work processes. We come across a number of different types of remains. As a coroner, it's our responsibility to determine the cause of death in a homicide, suicide, accident, or in a case of natural causes where a doctor cannot determine the cause of death. But we do come across remains that are not criminal related and don't fall into those categories. One is ancestral burials. We find a lot of indigenous people remains that are really archaeological finds more than they are criminal finds. So Romney, this area here is really a workbench, and all these outlets and work surfaces have a purpose, and it's really a dissection facility for electronic equipment. So we will be able to do digital forensic evidence, computers, photography, cell phones and the like. So this area starts our processes where the media is dissected. So the memory is extracted from whether it be a cell phone or a camera or a computer or the like. And then we head into the laboratory itself, where our technicians then take that memory and use these systems to do a digital analysis of our evidence. And again, that could be the memory from a cell phone, it could be a videotape or the like.
That's been a growing, I'd imagine on the pie chart, that's a growing piece of the pie for criminal investigation.
Absolutely. Every criminal investigation now starts with what kind of digital media did that suspect or those participants in that case utilize to either facilitate the crime or then talk about that crime after the fact. And so a lot of that has become a key part of our criminal prosecutions. And this area here gives us the ability to appropriately analyze and then duplicate evidence for court presentation. We've actually been able to build in expandable space in this project, and our hope is in the future to get funding to develop this lab and expand this lab into DNA analysis, into trace evidence examination, and then into toxicology work as well.
You want to chat about this a little bit? The fact what's going on here, we have a suspicious car, right? Yes. A suspect automobile.
So this vehicle was seized as evidence in a crime. Our investigations analysts are going to go through the vehicle. They'll process it for evidence. This part of the facility is one of 3 evidence processing bays. So this is the gathering and initial breakdown of evidence, and then the laboratory, which we visited, is actually where the detailed evidence analysis comes from. So this would be the raw material, and then that would be the fine polishing in that scenario. This is one of 2 vehicle evidence processing bays. We can do anything in here from vehicle examination and photography to the next bay where we can actually lift a vehicle in the air and do examination underneath the vehicle. None of this was available to us in the past.
So this vehicle was involved in a crime, 211, which is an armed robbery. In order for us to process, we go through several steps. The first step is actually just visually looking at the vehicle. Then we look for fingerprints. After the fingerprints, we also do DNA. We'll search for DNA. There was 3 suspects involved in this case. 2 of them are not identified. So it's our job to try to find the identification of that person through DNA, through fingerprints, or any other identification purposes that we can find within this vehicle. Within this vehicle, there were shots fired from the vehicle from the suspect. So not only are we going to look for identification, we're also going to look for basically bullets, casings, any kind of, if this vehicle was hit, we're looking for any material left by the victim, whether that be blood, DNA, that is what we're going to be looking for within this vehicle. Typically, this vehicle will take anywhere from 8 to 14 hours to process. We're actually at the end steps, or the ending of this vehicle in the investigations. But one of the things we did find was a bullet hole that was within the vehicle. You can see our trajectory rod that will show you an approximate angle of where the suspect and the bullet traveled before it entered the vehicle. We're going to get ready to cut the roof off this vehicle, a section of the roof off. But if you could see the top of this vehicle, you could see where the bullet actually traveled and created what's kind of like what a mole does in the dirt. It does that with the metal. And we believe that the bullet stopped in there. So we're going to retrieve that bullet to look at for ballistics and evidence within that bullet.
This is a second vehicle processing area where we can bring a car in that needs further examination. We can put it up on a lift. The vehicle can be brought into the air. Our technicians can look under a vehicle, gather evidence in a vehicle accident. Many times we'll have stolen vehicles, or we'll have evidence that, trace evidence that can place a vehicle at a crime scene. So we know a car, or we suspect a car was used in a crime. We're able to bring it here and then lift that vehicle and look and maybe find debris that matches the crime scene, leaves, sand, any other pieces of evidence that'll be found under a vehicle. That's what this room is for. It's also used for photography, and we're able to also run vehicles in this room with a specific or a specialized exhaust system that's specifically set so that we can operate a vehicle in the room and determine its capabilities at the time it was seized. This is the CSI tool room, they affectionately call it, but this is where the bulk evidence will be brought in from a crime scene, and they can do basic evidence processing and packaging here. Many times a piece of evidence will be packaged for examination at a later date, either by a different discipline or skill set, or because of the sheer volume of evidence. So This entire room is set up for basic breakdown of evidence and packaging, and then transfer into our property and evidence section, which is a secure piece of the building, which then hangs on to evidence in a secure and climate-controlled environment for analysis or disposition later.
To be here at this address, how long might evidence live here, have to stay here?
Some evidence can live here a lifetime.
Really?
Really. As I mentioned earlier, we have evidence from a 1948 homicide that's still in storage here, and we have to keep that evidence by law. But the bulk of our evidence pieces that come in are transferred out based on the jurisdiction of the crime, or the time element of the crime, or if it's just to be handed back to its rightful owner.
So again, the confidence level should be increased by all of us in the county that even if it's 1940s evidence, if it's here, it's not lost.
Right.
It's here in this building. That must be comforting in some way.
It gives us the ability to keep an audit trail to prove in court that we're able to properly hold evidence and that we purge evidence on a specific legal criteria. Our evidence system, our storage facility, takes in over 1,000 pieces of evidence a month. And if we didn't do a proper purge criteria, we'd be building more buildings just to store things. So that's the purpose of that evidence center. Romney, this area here is where all of our evidence comes in from our field. So any deputy that finds a lost wallet, all the way up to gathering evidence from a drug seizure or a homicide, the evidence comes here first from our field units. The evidence will then be broken down, packaged, and this is a packaging station. Then behind us is a computer area where they'll able to catalog evidence, enter it into our record management system, print a barcode for that evidence, and then send it into our property and evidence section through this one-way locker system.
This is the new morgue, and I know it's a strange place to be excited about a new facility, but this one really is worth being excited about for what it does for the county.
Absolutely. There's a couple of reasons that we're excited about this facility. One, and the most important part of working with people who've passed on, is to be respectful to the decedent and to the survivors, to the family. This new facility really increases our level of final disposition of human remains. And there's no more important thing, I think, than being able to be respectful to loved ones and survivors in that horrible event that we all experience in our lifetime. Second is that we're able to now seek accreditation for not only our forensic pathology section, but for our laboratory as well. We didn't have facilities that were capable of accreditation, which then further enhances our ability to do criminal prosecution and other laboratory analysis work. This facility is large enough now for Santa Cruz County to handle any horrific mass casualty event that we anticipate could happen in our jurisdiction, such as an airplane crash or a train crash or a large highway wreck. If we were to experience such an unfortunate event, we have the ability to appropriately to deal with that in those people that have passed on. Behind me we have two refrigeration units that are capable of storing dozens of decedents at the same time. We have 3 exam rooms. So we have one forensic pathologist on staff that the Sheriff's Office employs, but we have the ability to bring in additional pathologists should we have the need to process a mass casualty event. So right here is a double exam room. We're set up for 3 concurrent examinations. These are state-of-the-art exam facilities. These 2 are back-to-back. The next room over is set up for both post-mortem examination and tissue donation if a family so chooses to have that happen with a past loved one. As you can tell, there's no examination going on in here, which is why we're allowed in here now, Romney, but this is treated as a laboratory now. And so if there were visitation to be done during an autopsy, during a post-mortem examination, or if we were to do identification of unidentified remains through family and loved ones, they wouldn't be brought into this facility. On the other side of our facility, we have a camera system, a closed-circuit camera system that allows you to both watch an autopsy in an examination event, and also we have a mirror that we can use to do decedent identification in unidentified remains. This is where our folks will dress in and dress out to go to examination so that there's no contamination from a crime scene to the autopsy room. And in this same area, we have our investigators working. We have over 3,000 deaths that occur in Santa Cruz County on an annual basis, but only a fraction of them, about 10%, are actual coroner cases that we wind up working on. So our investigators are not only in charge of the coroner investigations, those 300 plus investigations, but they're also in charge of issuing death certificates to each and every decedent in the county. So they work very closely with all funeral homes, they work closely with churches, and then, of course, with the grieving family of every person that passes on.
So, beginning in the spring of 2014, roll calls will take place here, and deputies will roll on duty from this, a more central location. And it's expected the level of service, response times, and evidence management will improve as the Center for Public Safety and its professional upgrades boost efficiency and morale.
We've had guys who've done great work, but they're working out of janitorial closets, and we're stuffing 4 or 5 people in offices that were built for 2 people. And so now that they actually have an area to be comfortable in and to work, I think our productivity is going to increase, and I think our morale is really going to be at an all-time high, because when we invest in our people, I don't think there's a better investment on how to treat people and to give people the sense that they're valued and that their work is appreciated. And I think it's going to translate into better service to the community, and especially in the Live Oak area, where on a daily basis we'll have 100 police officers, whether they're detectives or coroners or patrolmen, working in and out of this facility and being in the Live Oak area, which is a high call volume area. So I think the more police we can have out here, the better off the community is going to be as well.
You could look at it in terms of efficiency. If we have to have an officer who's driven around to the 5 different locations that made up the sheriff's department, you can see the lost hours that we have and the expense that we have just trying to find all the different pieces. And then if you forget something, you have to go back to the first place. So centering it all in one place not only helps them become more efficient, but we think ultimately saves us money, because we're not renting places to do that work. We now have it all in one secure facility where the officers are, where the staff is, and it's close to the people that they serve.
People love to hear about green building. Well, there's nothing more green than taking an existing building and reconstituting it for your uses. I mean, we talk about drainage and soil erosion and all that. This property was already stabilized. So this was, from a green element, I mean, you've got a huge number of points right off the bat by taking an existing structure and kind of converting it to your use.
We want places that are safe for kids to play. We want effective after-school programs. We want people to be able to access the outdoors, and we want people to have safe places that they can walk and ride their bike. And then the Center for Public Safety is part of all that. The sheriff's involved with the Junior Giants program and the futsal program in Live Oak. The sheriff is very involved with the work we do in patrolling our beaches. And the fact that we have positive pro-social activities means that we're not going to see people entering the criminal justice system in the same way that we have in the past.
This facility is the state-of-the-art law enforcement facility, not only in the Central Coast, but probably in the state of California right now. Every day there's new technology developed and there's new facilities that are brought on board. But ours today will far exceed anything that any person that's worked with us could have ever dreamed to work in. And so I'm very proud of the fact that our executive team has been able to put this together and really make this a stadium for our team to play in for years and years to come.